One football boot we haven't talked about a lot on this channel is the Puma Ultra. And that may be because while the Puma Ultra Ultimate is a decent football boot, I just think there's so much better competition above that $200 price point. But one thing that Puma actually does really well is takedown boots. So in this video, we're gonna be talking about the third tier Puma Ultra Match that retails for just $80. We're gonna go over the things that work well and the things that don't work so well about this model. And by the end of the video, you should have an idea whether or not the Ultra Match is gonna be a good fit for you. And of course, if you're interested in picking up these boots or any of my other recommendations, you can find links to them on sale with exclusive discount codes in the description below. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video and start off with the design. So honestly, the first thing that caught my eye with the Puma Ultra variant that I have here is just going to be the colorway. I think this is the new Christian Pulisic colorway that came out just a few weeks ago, and I think that Puma has been pretty consistent with coming out with some of the coolest designs and colorways that we've seen among any of the top brands. They just seem really adventurous in terms of using poppy, bright colors, a lot of contrast, which I think not all players are going to be into. Sometimes you don't always want to be wearing something flashy, but to be fair, for players that want to have something a little bit more conservative, you can usually find a blackout option or an all-white option if that suits your style. But personally, I think that the orange and pink on this colorway actually go really well together. And the second thing that really caught my eye when I got these boots in hand is going to be the fact that they actually have a full one-piece upper. And the reason I found that surprising is because typically with third tier takedown boots from maybe Nike or Adidas, you're actually going to have a traditional tongue here running through the lacing system instead of this knit collar. Typically, it's only going to be in the pro and elite versions that cost around $220 for the elite and then maybe $140 for the pro, where you're actually going to get this knitted collar and a full one-piece upper. So I think it's pretty cool that Puma was able to get that one-piece upper design in a package that costs around $80. And beyond that, the knit collar on the Puma Ultra Match here actually feels pretty good. It doesn't feel cheap in any way, and it also has a lot of tension, and we're going to talk more about that when we get into the fit and feel. Now, connected to the knit collar that's going to wrap around your ankle and go over the top of your midfoot, you're going to have the rest of this synthetic mesh material. Now, while that mesh upper is going to be relatively thin, it's going to be somewhat soft to the touch, it does have a little bit of rigidity to it, and you can see it kind of fold and bend when you do flex the boot. You can even hear the upper creasing together there. I would say if you're familiar with the upper that's on some takedown versions of the X Crazy Fast, it feels pretty similar to that. Now, the upper isn't quite thin enough to the point where it's translucent like you've seen in some Puma models from recent years, but that being said, it is definitely thin enough to be classified as what you would call a speed boot. And overall, I'm pretty impressed with how close they've gotten this third tier takedown model to look like the $220 Ultra Ultimate. Looking at them side by side, all I could really tell was that the Ultra Ultimate that costs almost 3 times more has a slightly higher quality knit material that has some perforations in it. It just feels a little bit more premium, and then you also have a little bit more softness and less rigidity to the upper. But besides that, they really don't feel like they're two football boots that are around $200 apart. Now, the lacing system is going to be really simple, as you traditionally see on boots with this one-piece upper. They're essentially just going to be draped across that knit collar, and really the only reason they're there is just to provide you a little bit more lockdown towards the top of the ankle, because down towards the toe box and the midfoot, pretty much the shape of the upper is going to be doing all of the work. In other words, you're not really getting most of the lockdown from the lacing system itself. They're really just there to give you a little bit more added security. Then looking towards the back of the boot, you are going to have a soft padded heel liner that I thought was a really nice touch. From a looks and build quality perspective, I would say it's about on par with the Nike Vapor 15 Academy, which is one of my favorite third tier takedown boots you can currently get. Now, once you look towards the sole plate, that's where you actually start to see some of the main differences between this boot and the Ultra Ultimate. From a distance, they still do look pretty similar because they have this split sole design, but on the Ultra Match here, instead of having all chevron studs, you're actually going to have some more rounded off tri-star studs. And not only are the studs going to be a slightly different shape, but you're also going to get one additional stud in the forefoot that's not present in the premium version. And I actually like the addition of that extra stud in the forefoot because it gives me overall a little bit less stud pressure, and I find it makes them slightly more suitable for use on varied surfaces. So since the Ultra Match here is still recommended for use on firm ground natural grass, since the sole plate is a little bit less aggressive to its premium counterpart, I did feel a little bit more comfortable comfortable when I was testing these out on an artificial grass surface. And then as far as the flex of the sole plate, I would say it's pretty average, similar to what you would see from most third tier takedowns. Definitely not quite as rigid as some of those top tier models, but it's still going to have quite a lot of spring towards the toe box. Next up, let's get into the fit and feel. So I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the video that I don't think the Puma Ultra Ultimate is a great deal because it retails for about $220, and I just don't think that the fit is that great compared to some of the competition in that area. Because at that price point, you're looking at the Tiempo Legend 10 Pro from Nike. You're also looking at the top of the line New Balance models like the Furon V7 and the Takela V4. And all of those boots that I just mentioned are really comfortable. But you have to keep in mind that at these different price points, I'm going to be comparing the boots mentally to other similar boots that are at that price point. And trying on the Puma Ultra Match here compared to other $80 boots, I was actually pretty impressed. Other than being a tad more stiff than the Puma Ultra Ultimate, I actually thought the fit on the Match was surprisingly close. Now I went for a size 10.5 US, which is my typical size, and the length was perfect. Now in terms of the width of these boots, I did find that there was just enough space in the toe box for me, but that being said, these are definitely going to be on the slightly narrower side of average. Relative to some other brands, I found the width was actually pretty close to what I've seen from top-end speed boots from Adidas, but I think the Vapor 15 from Nike is actually going to be a little bit more accommodating for slightly wider foot shapes, and the New Balance is going to be wider even still. So if your feet do happen to have an average width or are on the slightly narrower side, or if you know that Puma boots work for you in the past, then the fit on the Ultra Match should work well for you. I also really liked, after lacing these up, how light they felt on feet. They definitely still held true to that speed boot category you would expect. I didn't notice any pressure points towards the heel area or the top of the toe box, which can definitely sometimes be pain points. However, the only pressure point I'd say I'd notice is maybe just towards the top of the boot here near the center of the lacing system, because that's just an area where the material can tend to bunch up a little bit when you're walking. And then the star of the show when it comes to the fit and feel is definitely going to be the knit collar here that I mentioned when talking about the design. It's just really rare that you see the implementation of a collar like this on the sub $100 price point. As I mentioned, all the third tier takedowns you get from other brands, you're just going to have a traditional tongue, which can sometimes feel a little cheaply made, a little bit thrown together, and you can clearly see the cost cutting measures from the different tiers in the takedown boots. But with the Ultra Match here, I honestly struggle to see the differences between this and the two tiers above it. I'm not sure if that's any indictment on the top tiers from Puma and suggesting that they're bad value, but it's definitely a good thing for a takedown boot. And then one final thing I want to note regarding the fit of these boots is that they are just going to be really close fitting on feet. So they don't have a relaxed vibe to them. They're not really like a leather football boot, so they're not like the Nike Premier 3 or the Copa Gloro that actually retail for a similar price. They're going to feel really streamlined, and there's not going to be a lot of extra space around your feet in these boots. I think maybe the best way to describe it is going to be a slightly more aggressive and responsive feeling that some players are going to like, and other players might be looking for something a little bit more forgiving and relaxed. Next up, let's get into the playability. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys and say that these boots are as comfortable as models that retail for over $200 or even models that retail for $150, but compared against the competition at this price point, I think these boots fare pretty well. They're going to give you a really close touch on the ball with a lot of responsiveness, as I mentioned. And because of the combination of the knit collar, the lacing system, and the heel liner here, you're going to get a ton of lockdown, so your heel isn't going to be slipping whatsoever. When dribbling or shooting, you're not going to have a ton of stickiness throughout this upper, so it's not a boot like the Phantom GX or even the Puma Future, where you're going to have a lot of added grip or sticky material throughout the sides of the boot. It's actually going to have a pretty matte finish to it. So just keep that in mind. I usually like that feeling because I don't want my foot to be constantly hugging the ball when I'm dribbling. I feel like it just makes it a little bit easier for the ball to get stuck under you, especially when the boots are brand new. So I usually like having boots that have that matte finish. So for me, it's a good thing. Then if I were to give one complaint about the Ultra Match, it would be the rigidity of the upper. I just wish that on feet, the mesh upper here was a little bit more soft and flexible, because in its current state, it can lead to a little bit of bunching up when you're walking and running, and for me, that just creates some pressure points towards the top of the foot. Now there is a chance that that feeling of the boots bunching up can diminish over time as you break in the boots, but it can be a little bit annoying when they're fresh out of the box. But I gotta be real with you guys, my expectations were pretty low when I got these boots out of the box. Just because in recent years, I haven't been a huge fan of the Ultra series. But after playing in these for a pretty long session, they actually left me pleasantly surprised. They didn't cause any pain in the heel area or the toe box, and they overall didn't hinder what I felt like I could do on the field. Next up, let's talk about the value. So the Puma Ultra Match here retails for a full price on Puma's website of $85. But today, depending on the colorway you're looking at, you can often find these on sale for far less than that, sometimes for $60 or $70. And that's a really decent price considering that these boots aren't a huge step down from the Puma Ultra Ultimate that retails for $220. And I think it says a lot about this boot that playing in it almost reminded me in playing in the Adidas X Crazy Fast Point 1 that I picked up for about $270, considering the price difference between the two. And you are just going to be really hard pressed to find another football boot that's going to give you a quality knitted collar at a price point of $80 or less, and for that I have to give Puma props. And if anything, what this boot does is just cement that the best value you can find at Puma right now is going to be from their takedowns. And I think until Puma starts implementing some more impressive higher end features on their $200 boots, it's just going to be so much easier to recommend the second and third takedown models instead. So let's round things out by talking about the competition for the Ultra Match. So some of the most obvious competition for the Ultra Match here is going to be from other Puma models. And as I mentioned, this boot holds up really well against both the premium and the second tier takedown. I would say if you've only got around $100 or less to spend, I would check out the third tier. But if you've got an extra $60 laying around and can spend around $130 to $140 on a new pair, the Puma Ultra Pro, which is the second tier takedown, is going to offer a slightly higher quality build. And then of course, there's the other popular third tier takedown from Puma, which is going to be the Future Match that I reviewed a few months ago. Now, while I thought the Future Match was a lot of fun to play in and it was a really comfortable football boot, the main issue I had with the Future Match was the lockdown. I just felt like you didn't get quite enough security from the lacing system. Things just felt a little bit too loose in the upper, which is not a problem that you have with the Ultra. So from a purely performance perspective, I would actually say the Ultra has a slight advantage over the Future. But from a comfort perspective, the Future is still going to win out. Now, in terms of third tier takedowns of other speed boots, the only one worth mentioning in the same category is going to be the Vapor 15 Academy from Nike. Now, I am still to this day really impressed with the Vapor 15 Academy, and if you would prefer something that has a traditional lacing system, that's going to be a great option for you, and it's also going to offer you a little bit more width throughout the toe box compared to the Puma Ultra here. But the Ultra Match and Vapor 15 Academy are both great third tier takedowns, and at the end of the day, it might just come down to which one you prefer the overall look and aesthetic of. So what are my final thoughts? For $80 or less, this is going to be a great option in the speed boot category. It's got the build quality and feature set that you often see from boots retailing for around $130. And especially for those with average to slightly narrower feet, these are going to be a good option. And that is going to do it for this video. Let me know in the comments below if you've gotten to try on these boots and what you think of them. I've got some more takedown boots that I'm going to be reviewing in the coming weeks, and we've also got some really cool high-end boots coming in as well. And if you want to support the channel, please like the video and subscribe so you can be notified when new content drops. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.